I'm going to start by just describing the work at a high level, what we did across all of the areas. So we included the NICU here as well as the PICU and the cardiac ICU. And then Amir is going to go into more detail in his presentation in regards to the NICU data. I would like to invite everybody or anyone to interrupt me as I go along if you have any questions so that I can address them in the moment. You don't have to wait to the end of the presentation if you do have any questions, okay? All right. So this work started back in 2012, really. We determined that we had an increased number of nitric oxide utilization hours, and it was steadily going up every year. And my next slide will show you our utilization. But we thought we had to start to influence our utilization based on the 4 points that you see here. So we really wanted to have a focus on quality and patient safety. We wanted to reduce variation in practices amongst the different clinicians that were working at the bedside. We wanted to promote efficient use of nitric oxide with our patients, and then all of this we hoped would have resulted in some cost savings for ourselves. So this graph just shows you that we did have a steady increase in our utilization over a 5 to 6 year period. We did have a blip in 2006, 2007, and then it came down and then it steadily grew again after that. So the work that we did really was highlighted because of the last 2 years that you see on this graph, and we needed to do something to bring those numbers down again if we could. So we decided to do a comprehensive retrospective review of our nitric oxide use here at SickKids. So we pulled charts from all of our patients that were in nitric oxide in 2011, 2012, and decided that we had to look for some efficiencies and optimize, the patient care and safety. So once we were able to gather the data on all these patients, we cross-referenced what was actually happening with our patients versus our guidelines. And we were really concentrating on looking at indications for use. So were we starting it on the right patients? Response to therapy. So if we started it, was there actually a response? And not, or if there was, were we weaning appropriately? So there was a total of 11,686 patients that we looked at, and that again is across all 3 of our units. So the PICU, the cardiac ICU, and the NICU. There was a total of 115 patients. And based on our data collection, this is what we found. 27% of our patients were actually placed on nitric oxide, but they weren't really falling in the set criteria that we had established within our guideline. 70% of the patients did have patients initiated on nitric did have a clear response, but that meant that 30%, there was an opportunity with 30% that shouldn't have been put on to have been. 43% of our patients met weaning criteria, but then weaning was not initiated in that moment in time. And then 35% of our patients had prolonged weaning periods. So this didn't fall within our guidelines again. So based on the data that we collected and the guidelines that we had in place at that moment, we identified a few opportunities. So we decided that we decided that we needed to look for ways to help with timely iNO weaning when patients met criteria. We had to look at optimizing the weaning phase as a whole. We wanted to have consistent daily reassessments of nitric oxide and to ensure that patients should still be on it, or if they could be initiated into weaning. We wanted to add guidelines for assessment of patients admitted already on nitric oxide from other hospitals. So if a patient came to us from a different institution, we generally just left them on what they came on. We weren't challenging them or considering if there were other things we could do here. And we wanted to develop guidelines with a focus on clinical indicators versus actual diagnosis. And I think this is in line with the work that we have done within this group as well. So within developing our nitric oxide stewardship project, we were looking for key strategies to identify ways to ensure successful implementation and sustainability of our work. So the first thing that we identified is that we really had to engage physician leadership. And we were really lucky that we had Dr. Bob Jenkoff, who's on the line, as well as Dr. Lawson, really join us and buy into this whole stewardship program. We engaged the interprofessional teams at the bedside. So the clinicians working at the bedside, we wanted them to be aware of the opportunities that we found. We shared the data with them as well, and they also recognized that we could do things better. We engaged our RT technical division, so we have technicians that help us behind the scenes to make sure the workflow happens nicely at the bedside. And we engaged them in the data collection as well, so that they also understood the importance of the work that we wanted to implement. And then finally, we also engaged senior leadership. So we wanted to ensure that at a higher level in the organization, they saw the relevance and the importance of this project. Next, we looked at all of our nitric oxide guidelines. So we do have one for the NICU, and then we have one for the critical care unit, which encompasses both the cardiac unit as well as the PICU. So we updated all of those guidelines and the algorithms that were associated with them, and we did that based on looking at what other institutions were doing. So we benchmarked, as well as looking at the literature. We developed data collection forms that allowed us to now collect data on each of these patients started on nitric oxide more in real time, so we weren't having to go back and look at charts. And we embedded nitric oxide utilization into daily conversations. So at SickKids, we do have something called Daily Continuous Improvement Process. And within that whole initiative, there is something called a manager status sheet, where the manager has a conversation with the leader of the day. So I have charge RTs, and daily I discuss the patients that are on nitric oxide and if there's any opportunities to wean them or to determine if they actually were responders, etc. We also embedded within our stewardship program monthly meetings with the physician champions, so Dr. Lawson and Dr. Jenkoff, and our RT leadership team. So during those meetings, which occurred monthly, like I said, we would review the practices that were happening at the bedside. We would definitely celebrate the successes we were seeing, and we looked for further opportunities. So within that group, we were able to identify other things that we could implement, little things. For example, we recognized that sometimes the tanks were being left on, not a lot, but sometimes because perhaps it just wasn't, the tank wasn't closed effectively. So we implemented a daily check of all of the nitric oxide tanks to make sure that that wouldn't have occurred. If it did occur, it wouldn't be for a prolonged period of time. And that's the comprehensive quality assurance program that is in the next point. So our RT technical division was pulled into that whole program, and they check our tanks actually every shift to make sure, them along with our charge RTs, they check our tanks every shift to make sure that they are in fact off and aren't left on by mistake. And we also engage our RT technical division in downloading our nitric oxide data on a weekly basis. So every Monday morning, one of my techs does go around and downloads all of the data, and that way we can keep on top of what our utilization is like. Then monthly, I take the data and I present it at various forums, including advisory council, and that's an interprofessional audience. When I present this data, I show them the numbers, but I also talk about trends in utilization, any opportunities to enhance practice, and then again, we do celebrate successes because I think as a team, we'd really come together, and it was nice to be able to talk about the positives. And then finally, we wanted to enhance our accountability. So for our first year, we established that we would pick a stretch target for our iNO utilization as we implemented the stewardship program. So we had used about 11,000 hours in the year that we were putting together our stewardship program. And so we decided to purchase only 7,600 hours for the year in which we started the stewardship program. So it was a hefty target. It made a bunch of us quite nervous, but it ended up working out because everyone was very motivated to establish or to take on that goal. And then we also, corporately, they decided to add nitric oxide utilization to the scorecard, to the corporate scorecard. So that as well enhanced our accountability. So what happened? In our first year, we were able to establish some efficiencies. So we did absolutely decrease the number of hours we used. So like I said, in 2012, 2013, we had 11,254 hours. So after the implementation of the nitric oxide stewardship program, we brought our utilization down to 6,563 hours. So that was actually a drop in 4,691 hours.
Hello?
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 Hi? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Is
I
anyone
don't know
else
if
there?
anybody else can. This is Matt.
What happened?
I know.
Are you there?
Have we lost
Well, I wonder if something happened with our connection to them at CAFC.
Oh.
I might pause this for a moment because she was recording this.
Yeah, we're okay.
We're all here.
I was talking to
Okay, then I'll continue.
Yes.
I don't know what happened there, but
no,
I will
got some
continue.
interference.
Where was I? So that year, the implementation year, like I said, we had purchased 7,600 hours, and we were able to come in actually under our target. So we were really happy about that. Overall, we had an enhanced engagement by all stakeholders, so everyone from our technical division to the clinical staff, right up to senior executive, were really excited about the success, and everyone was really engaged in the whole stewardship program. And we were able to have real-time evaluation of our practices, so we enhanced our learning of what we were doing at the bedside because we were evaluating it more quickly as opposed to a year later. So this just is an example of a graph that I would show every month along with some other data, but this just gave the group an indication of how we were doing compared to our target. So we took our 7,600 hours and divided by 12, and we kind of made that our estimate goal per month. And then we just tracked it every month, and we were able to graphically show this to everybody so they knew kind of where we were sitting in terms of our target. So in terms of sustainability, we really truly feel that the engagement from the Chief of Critical Care, so Dr. Lawson, the Medical Director of Neonatology, as well as Dr. Janko, proved to be instrumental in this being a success. If we didn't have their support through all of this, we don't feel that there would have been the success that we had. The monthly meetings that we had allowed for ongoing discussion within our group and really allowed us to look for more opportunities and to continue the momentum moving forward. The real-time data sharing allowed for us to include all stakeholders into those discussions. We had timely analysis again, and that allowed us to learn from what we were doing. And it engaged the entire interprofessional team, which we also felt was very important. The increased awareness with our senior executive also helped to highlight it at a higher level, and it also pushed us and made us accountable for the things that we were doing. And then we did have a very successful first year, so we were able to celebrate that with the entire group and keep that to help us motivate going forward. So in our second year of our stewardship program, we are continuing with the components that we implemented in the first year. We have set a lower target of utilization at 6,000 hours this year, and to see if we can hit that. And we've presented our stewardship at various conferences now in poster format as well as oral presentations. And then we're also engaged right now in developing a SCAMP, which is, my apologies, let me tell you what that stands for. A Standardized Clinical Assessment and Management Plan. So it's a group of hospitals that look at standardizing practices and evaluating the way practice is done so that we can learn from it. So we have identified the nitric oxide stewardship as a priority for this initiative, and it's one of the first initiatives that's being implemented into a SCAMP. So we're really excited about that work, and we're currently involved in that. And then this, I just wanted to include, it's just a framework, really. I wanted to highlight the main pieces of our stewardship program. Part of our discussion today is to talk about what we can do moving forward in terms of stewardship across the country. So I thought I'd just include this for point form for people as a reference. And that's it for me. Amir still has his presentation, but did anyone have any questions for me?
Thank you very much, Christina, for this nice presentation. This is Monserrat from Edmonton. I just wanted to know, with the decrease in the hours, 4,900 hours, did you see a change in the number of patients that, for example, you started with 115, but this time period that you're showing the less use, 6,000 some hundred, is that different patient numbers? And what about the cases? Is there a difference in there? For example, before you were using it for more for, you know, PPHN, or this time it's different. Has that been looked into? Thanks.
No, it's a great question, actually, and I should have included that. The number of patients actually did not diminish. It was roughly the same, and I think in the NICU it went up. Yeah, it went up. So, no, the number of patients was not different, or it in fact went up. So we were able to just be more efficient with our use. We found that we were definitely starting it on the right patients, and we moved away from saying we were going to start it on diaphragmatic hernia, and we were saying it was more that we wanted to have it started on someone because they had oxygenation issues or that kind of thing. So we found we were starting on the right people, and we found that we were just getting better at weaning. So where we were able to maximize our efficiencies was really in the weaning phases. We weren't leaving patients on for days and days without having any discussion. We were having a discussion every single shift and making sure that we were weaning the way we could.
Sorry,
in terms of the diagnoses or the types of patients we saw, I don't have that directly in front of me currently, but I think Amir has some more data that he'll share that might give you a little bit more of a sense in terms of the NICU specifically. So hopefully that will be able to answer a little bit more in detail what you're asking.
And the other question is whether any other types of pulmonary vasodilators were being used concurrently with the iNO, and as such, that's why it decreased the number of hours?
No, we didn't have anything else being done simultaneously. Our practices in every other sense stayed the same. We just were literally trying to wean more effectively.
Okay, thank you so much.
No worries, that's a great question. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Christina, it's Elaine. I just want to tell you it was a fantastic presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. That's very sweet of you.
I just had one
Can everyone see this other presentation now?
Oh,
Okay, great. So I'm going to hand over the mic to Amir.
Just a second. There's a question from Chris, I believe.
Yeah, we did a similar thing based on what you guys had started in Toronto. We did a proof of concept here between the Stollery and the Alberta Children's in Calgary. One thing we found really useful was we actually had we had an order set that the physicians had to actually fill out as an order to and push the way to do it. Now, did you guys have that?
We didn't actually, and it's something we are trying to push for now.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about actually your order set and how you got that implemented.
Yeah, that was actually a big way for us to actually then just put it right in front of the physician and make them decide, is it clinically relevant or is it not? Should we turn it off? So it was a very useful tool that we found very helpful in starting to reduce our numbers in a short period of time.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay.
Sorry, just wanted to interject, Bob Jankov here. That's wonderful, and it's. Would it be possible for you to share that with us? Because that's something we, as Christina said, we'd love to institute an order sheet. That I think would help a lot.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a problem. I'll talk to Carrie Beck, who is our lead for the iNO program here, because we had both the weaning and the initiation on the same sheet, but the one problem we found is that we needed them on separate sheets. So we're in the middle of changing that. So there's one for start and one for weaning, and sections for why don't you want to wean and stuff like that. But I can certainly share that with you guys, our templates, when I'll
that sounds fantastic. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris. That would be great.
Okay, so this is the second presentation from SickKids. I will be focused more on the NICU, and this is a little bit of introduction about nitric oxide. I will be brief because some of my slides will be kind of repetition of what Christina said, so I'll try to be quick on those. So thank you for giving me the chance to give this talk. This is the nitric oxide was named as the molecule of the year in 1992 by the Science magazine, and 5 years after, 3 investigators from the US separately discovered the nitric oxide endothelium-derived relaxing factor in 1987. It took about 11 years for those scientists to receive the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine in 1998 for their discoveries regarding nitric oxide as a signaling molecule in the cardiovascular system. So effects of nitric oxide, it's, as you know, a therapeutic gas that is marketed and sold as a drug given by inhalation. The first clinical use for hypoxemic respiratory failure in neonatology was in 1992. It selectively dilates the pulmonary blood vessels. It has been approved for PPHN in term and near-term infants less than 2 weeks of life. This is what we call the license or the approved treatment. However, we still have considerable amounts of nitric oxide on off-label usage, which is anything apart from what it's approved for, so mainly for preterms. It has been approved in the States by the FDA in 1999 and in Canada in 2005. So those are, this slide summarizes the characteristics and findings of the major nitric oxide trials that led to the approval of nitric oxide use. The 2 largest and most powerful trials are the NINOS and the Synergy. I highlighted in red, from which our present practices are largely derived. So you can note from the high oxygenation index values that those 2 specific trials have the 6th babies and have higher mortality rates than what we see nowadays. So the consistently positive outcome from those studies was improvement in oxygenation, resulting in reduced ECMO rate or the need for ECMO. There was no persistent finding, nothing on mortality or long-term outcome have been documented. So how we should use that? Used whenever pulmonary vasodilation is desirable. So, for example, for right ventricular dysfunction, the safe duration of nitric oxide therapy is unknown, but the mean duration of therapy in the trials we discussed in the last slide was between 48 and 96 hours. So it's usually we should treat persistent hypoxemia. When other measures fail, we should try everything else first. We should, whenever pulmonary vasodilation is desirable, as I said, in right ventricular dysfunction, usually we start at maximum dose, which is 20. Most of the places would use 20, and assess response and wean as early as we can. So we found when we assessed our guidelines, we thought that if our guidelines are properly followed, we would be able to get our infants off nitric oxide in less than 24 hours. So there is no doubt that nitric oxide greatly simplified the management of PPHN in neonates. So nitric is a potent and potentially toxic medication which is used in critically ill infants. I'm talking mainly about neonates. It's an expensive, and we still need to learn a lot about how, for whom, and when to use it. So a key observation, as Christina said, a key observation that led to us to examine our usage is our expenditure increased between 2009 and 11. And when we looked we found that our guidelines were more or less being ignored for most of the infants. So we evaluated our adherence to guidelines, and we found that the weaning practices are highly variable between physicians and between units. We have 3 units, as Christina said. So what did we do? We presented the data to physicians. I'll be quick here because this is kind of repetition of what Christina said. We found that the areas for improvement can be patient selection, how to collect data, how to adhere more to the guidelines, the guidelines to be more user-friendly and easy to follow. So as we said, guidelines alone are not enough, and based on our recent experience, we found that we should start something else, and that's when we started the stewardship program. We learned from other stewardship programs. For example, the antibiotic one, which is the most tested one or the famous one. It's generally, stewardship programs are known to promote evidence-based use and decrease practice variation. So it is of proven value in improving quality and patient safety. This is kind of repetition of what Christina said. I wouldn't go through this again. And our objective, the objective for this work was to determine whether an institution of nitric oxide stewardship was associated with changes in the nitric oxide utilization and weaning practices. So what did we do? We compared 2 epochs, the pre-stewardship program and post-stewardship program. The pre-stewardship was between April 11 and March 13, and it started end of March 13, so the post-stewardship is between April 13 and December 14, and it is ongoing. So we collected the data retrospectively for the pre-stewardship epoch and prospectively for the post-stewardship epoch, and this is happening now in real time. So we are collecting every day when we have a patient started on nitric oxide. So our primary outcome was the weaning times, and secondary outcome were demographics, indication, off-label use, and response to nitric oxide. So exclusion, this is the exclusion criteria from the analysis of weaning times. So in order to avoid bias as much as we can, we excluded babies with congenital heart disease if the nitric was discontinued from maximum dose, if there is rebound hypoxemia which necessitates or needed escalation of the dose, again, re-increase of nitric oxide, deviation from weaning guidelines as per the physician order, if the baby died on nitric or if he needed ECMO. This is the data. So this is the data, what we saw. The 2 columns, you can see the pre-stewardship and the post-stewardship. We have 88 infants in the pre-stewardship epoch and 59 in the post-stewardship epoch, but they are not the same, so you cannot really compare that because they are not equal. The epochs are not equal. The time is different. So there was, when we looked at hours per patient and hours per patient with the exclusion, we found significant reduction in the nitric oxide hours per patient. This was very significant. In hours per patient from maximum dose to initial wean, and the other part is from initial wean to discontinuation. So in terms of total nitric oxide per patient, applying the exclusion criteria will drop about 1/4 of the patients in the pre-stewardship epoch from analysis, and about half the patients in the post-stewardship epoch, as you can see from the numbers. However, in case we apply exclusion criteria or we don't apply it, we still have very significant difference between the 2 epochs. No significant difference was noted in patient demographics or any of the other secondary outcomes. So, lastly, in conclusion, it is clear that the establishment of a nitric oxide stewardship program in sick kids, and I'm talking about the NICU, it was associated with improved alignment with weaning practices and significant reductions, the total hours per patient, hours from maximum dose to initial wean, so from 20 to the time to start weaning, this is what I mean. And the next thing is hours from the initial weaning of nitric oxide. So these are the team involved in the stewardship program at SickKids, and I'd like to thank all of them. Thank you very much, and I would welcome any.
Thanks very much. That was great. Both of you, Christina and Amir,